There was a moment, a brief, shining, almost arrogant moment when America believed it had won. Not just a war, not just a decade, history itself. It was 1991. The Soviet Union had just collapsed like a cheap tent in a desert storm. The Berlin Wall was rubble. Francis Fukuyama, a political scientist who would later spend years regretting it, declared the end of history. Liberal democracy had triumphed. America was the last man standing, the sole superpower, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the entire planet. Washington looked out at the world and saw a blank canvas, and it picked up the brush. Fast forward to today. American bases in the Middle East are under constant rocket fire. The US dollar is being quietly abandoned in oil trades. American-backed governments are wobbling. The aircraft carriers that once made dictators sweat are being called expensive targets by military analysts. And somewhere in Tehran, in the corridors of power draped with Persian calligraphy and revolutionary slogans, old men with long beards are doing something they haven't done in a very long time. They're smiling. This is the story of how one country, sanctioned, isolated, labeled a terrorist state, bombed by proxies and threatened with annihilation for 45 years, is systematically dismantling the American order in the Middle East. This is the story of how Iran might just be winning. To understand how an empire ends, you first have to understand how it was built. After World War II, the United States made a calculation. The Middle East sat on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. Whoever controlled that oil controlled the global economy, and whoever controlled the global economy controlled the world. So America got to work. In 1953, the CIA and British intelligence orchestrated a coup in, wait for it, Iran. A democratically elected prime minister named Mohammad Mossadegh had the audacity to nationalize Iranian oil. He thought Iran's oil should belong to, well, Iran. The Americans and British disagreed, strongly. Mossadegh was removed, the Shah was reinstated, Iran's oil kept flowing west. It was a clean, efficient operation, and it planted a seed of rage that would take 26 years to fully bloom. But America wasn't done building. Throughout the Cold War, Washington constructed an elaborate architecture of dominance across the region. Military bases in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and eventually Iraq. Defense treaties with the Gulf monarchies that essentially said, we protect your throne, you keep the oil flowing and price it in dollars. The petrodollar system, perhaps the most ingenious financial trap ever constructed, meant that every country on Earth that wanted oil had to first acquire US dollars, which meant demand for dollars never died, which meant America could print money and export inflation, which meant the entire global economy was, in a very real sense, subsidizing American power. Add to this the U.S. Sixth Fleet patrolling the Mediterranean, the Fifth Fleet anchored in Bahrain controlling the Persian Gulf, bases stretching from Djibouti to Diego Garcia, Israel as a regional military powerhouse receiving $3.8 billion annually in U.S. military aid, Egypt kept stable with $1.3 billion a year, Jordan on the payroll, Saudi Arabia buying hundreds of billions in American weapons. The architecture was beautiful in a terrifying sort of way. America didn't need to occupy every country. It just needed everyone to know that it could. This was the order. This was the empire. Not called an empire, of course, America doesn't do that, but functioning like one in every way that mattered. And standing at the edges of this order, watching it, studying it, absolutely furious about it, was Iran. 1979 changed everything. The Iranian Revolution wasn't just a change of government, it was a civilizational declaration of war against the American-designed order. When students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held 52 Americans hostage for 444 days, it wasn't chaos, it was a message, delivered slowly, deliberately, to maximum humiliation. America tried to respond. President Carter authorized a rescue mission, Operation Eagle Claw, that ended when American helicopters crashed in the Iranian desert, in the sand, without a single shot fired by the enemy. The most powerful military in the world, defeated by bad weather and mechanical failure. Iran filed that image away carefully. Then came 8 years of war with Iraq, a war where America backed Saddam Hussein, supplied him with intelligence, looked the other way when he used chemical weapons against Iranian soldiers and Kurdish civilians. Iran bled. Hundreds of thousands died. The country was economically devastated. And yet, the Islamic Republic survived. This is the first thing you must understand about Iran's strategic mindset. They are extraordinarily patient. Persian civilization is 3,000 years old. They've been invaded by Greeks, Arabs, Mongols, and Soviets. They've always survived. In Tehran's strategic culture, a decade is not a long time. 40 years is not a long time. They're playing a game with a very different clock. While America was thinking in 4-year election cycles, Iran was thinking in generations. After the war with Iraq ended in 1988, Iran made a strategic decision that would reshape the entire region. Direct confrontation with America was suicide. The military gap was too wide. But asymmetric warfare, proxy networks, that was a different battlefield, one where American technological superiority mattered far less. Iran began investing, not in tanks and aircraft carriers, it couldn't compete there. It invested in relationships, in ideology, in networks of influence that stretched from Lebanon to Yemen to Iraq to Gaza. It invested in missiles, thousands of them, cheap, increasingly precise, pointed at every American base and allied capital in the region. It invested in the one thing America consistently underestimated: human will. Here's something that never gets explained properly in Western media. Iran doesn't have colonies. It doesn't have formal territories. It doesn't plant its flag on foreign soil and call it an empire. What it has is something far more sophisticated and, from a strategic standpoint, far more durable. Call it the axis of resistance. Call it Iran's proxy network. Call it whatever you like. What it is, functionally, is a distributed empire. An empire of influence, ideology, and military capability, spread across 4 countries, costing Iran a fraction of what America spends maintaining its own regional presence. Let's take the tour. Lebanon. Hezbollah, founded with Iranian support in 1982, initially as a response to Israeli occupation. Today, it is not just a militia, it is a state within a state. It runs schools, hospitals, social services, and a military that, in 2006, fought the Israeli Defense Forces, one of the most capable armies on earth, to a standstill for 34 days. Iraq. The Popular Mobilization Forces, the PMF. When ISIS swept through Iraq in 2014 and the American-trained Iraqi army dissolved faster than sugar in hot tea, it was Iranian-backed militias that filled the vacuum. Today, the PMF is formally integrated into the Iraqi state, with 200,000 fighters and leaders who openly celebrate their relationship with Tehran. American troops in Iraq are regularly targeted by PMF-linked groups. Every few months, another rocket lands near a U.S. base. A reminder, we're still here. Yemen, the Houthis. Here's a story that should have gotten more attention. A militia in one of the poorest countries on earth, armed and trained by Iran, has been fighting a coalition led by Saudi Arabia, equipped with the most advanced American and British weapons for nearly a decade. And the Houthis are not losing. They've fired missiles at Riyadh, they've attacked Saudi oil facilities, and starting in late 2023, they began targeting international shipping in the Red Sea, one of the world's most critical trade routes, grinding global commerce and forcing the U.S. Navy to spend millions of dollars shooting down cheap drones. The cost-exchange ratio is catastrophic for America. A $2 million missile to shoot down a $20,000 drone. The Houthis don't need to win militarily, they just need to be expensive. Gaza and the West Bank. Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Iran's investment here is ideological as much as material. The October 7th attack demonstrated the military capability that years of Iranian support had enabled. The subsequent war has consumed Israeli and American political capital at a scale that has shocked Western capitals. Now step back and look at this map. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen,
Gaza. Iran has effectively constructed a geographic arc of influence and military threat that encircles Israel, threatens Saudi Arabia, menaces Gulf shipping lanes, and puts every American base in the region within missile range. This didn't happen by accident. This was 40 years of patient, deliberate strategic construction. And America? America called them terrorists, issued sanctions, and wondered why none of it was working. Let's talk about sanctions, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating and a little embarrassing for Washington. The theory of economic sanctions is straightforward. Strangle a country's economy. Make the population suffer. The population pressures the government. The government changes its behavior. Simple. Except it almost never works that way, especially not with Iran. America has had sanctions on Iran since 1979. That's 45 years. 45 years of economic warfare. Iran is still there. The Islamic Republic is still there. Its nuclear program, the primary target of sanctions, is more advanced than it has ever been. Its proxy network is larger than it has ever been. Its regional influence is greater than it has ever been. What sanctions actually did was force Iran to become self-sufficient in ways that now make it harder to pressure. Iran developed its own defense industry, its own drone technology, so effective that Russia bought Iranian drones to use in Ukraine, which is a sentence that would have seemed insane 10 years ago. Its own pharmaceutical sector, its own agricultural supply chains. Sanctions also pushed Iran directly into the arms of the two countries America is most worried about, China and Russia. China is now Iran's largest trading partner, buying Iranian oil at a discount and paying in yuan, not dollars. The China-Iran 25-year cooperation agreement, signed in 2021, is worth a reported $400 billion. Infrastructure, technology, military cooperation, in exchange for all that sweet, sanctioned, but discounted oil. Russia and Iran have developed a military-industrial relationship that has surprised Western analysts. Iranian drones in Ukraine, Russian air defense systems in Iran, joint coordination in Syria. And here's the darkest irony. By cutting Iran out of the dollar system, America has accelerated Iran's push to find alternatives to the dollar system, which is exactly the thing America most needs to prevent. Sanctions didn't cage Iran, they motivated it, they focused it, they sent it looking for new friends. And Iran found some very powerful ones. We need to talk about the bomb. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, officially, probably. What it does have is the knowledge, the infrastructure, and the enriched uranium to build one relatively quickly if it chose to. Analysts at the International Atomic Energy Agency estimate Iran could have enough highly enriched uranium for a bomb in, well, the timeline keeps shrinking. Some say weeks, some say months. The point is, it is no longer a distant theoretical. This situation exists because of a decision that Iran did not make alone. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, was genuinely one of the most impressive pieces of multilateral diplomacy in decades. Iran agreed to severe limits on its nuclear program. International inspectors got access. Sanctions were partially lifted. It wasn't perfect, but it was working. Then Donald Trump walked into the Oval Office, looked at the deal, and tore it up. Why? Partly ideology. Partly because he seemed to believe he could get a better deal through maximum pressure. Partly, and this is where it gets difficult to be charitable, because it was Obama's deal, and anything Obama did apparently needed to be undone. Trump reimposed sanctions, assassinated Iran's top general Qasem Soleimani in January 2020, an act that shocked the region and sent Iran's parliament to vote almost unanimously to expel American troops from the region. And what did maximum pressure achieve? Iran's uranium enrichment went from 3.67% under the JCPOA to 60%, to 84%. The centrifuges kept spinning. The stockpile kept growing. When Biden came in and tried to resurrect the deal, Iran, having learned its lesson about American commitments that expire every 4 years, drove an increasingly hard bargain. Negotiations dragged. Then Trump came back, and the deal was dead again. Now Trump is back for round 2, claiming he wants a deal while simultaneously threatening to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. Iranian officials responded with their customary diplomatic subtlety by pointing out that if America attacks, Iran's nuclear program goes underground, literally. into facilities so deep that even the most powerful American bunker busters might not reach them. There's a theory in Tehran that nuclear ambiguity, being almost there but not quite, is actually more strategically valuable than having the bomb. Because the moment Iran has a bomb, the rules change dramatically. But as long as they're approaching the threshold, they have leverage. Every negotiation, every crisis, the unspoken subtext, don't push us too far, or we finish what we started. It's a dangerous game, but Iran has been playing it for 20 years, and they're still at the table.
And America's internal contradictions are now playing out on live television every day for the entire world to watch. Start with the money. The United States has a national debt approaching $35 trillion. The cost of maintaining hundreds of military bases globally runs into the hundreds of billions annually. The wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, both launched to assert American dominance in the greater Middle East, cost an estimated $8 trillion combined when you count long-term veteran care. What did they produce? A destabilized Iraq now partially aligned with Iran, a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan that looks remarkably similar to pre-2001 Afghanistan, except with more American weapons scattered around. Then there's the political dysfunction. American foreign policy now changes every 4 years, sometimes more dramatically. Allies in the region have watched America commit to agreements and then abandon them with the casual indifference of someone unsubscribing from a streaming service. The Kurds, abandoned. The JCPOA, abandoned. Afghan allies, abandoned. When your commitments have a 4-year expiration date, countries start hedging their bets. Saudi Arabia is hedging. The UAE is hedging. Even Turkey, a NATO member, is hedging. Speaking of Trump, because apparently every conversation about the Middle East must eventually arrive here, his second-term foreign policy toward Iran has been a masterclass in strategic confusion. He is simultaneously threatening to bomb Iran, expressed a desire to negotiate with Iran, and at one point, in what might be the single most baffling statement ever made about Middle Eastern geopolitics, suggested that Iran needed new leadership, which, fine, many would agree. But there were reports that some in his orbit apparently imagined he himself might have some role in shaping what that leadership looked like. To be very clear, the idea of Donald Trump as any kind of spiritual or political authority in Iran, a theocratic republic whose entire founding ideology is based on resistance to exactly the type of Western strongman Trump embodies, is so cosmically absurd that even Iranian hardliners, people who spend considerable professional energy disliking Americans, found it funny. The supreme leader, one imagines, slept soundly that night. But underneath the comedy is a serious point. American policy toward Iran has been incoherent for decades. Regime change, then negotiation, then maximum pressure, then negotiation, then regime change again. Iran has outlasted 8 American presidents. It has developed a finely tuned ability to wait out Washington's mood swings. Here's the number that keeps American Treasury officials staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Since 1974, when Henry Kissinger negotiated the petrodollar arrangement with Saudi Arabia, the global oil trade has been denominated in U.S. dollars. You want oil? You need dollars. This single arrangement has been the financial foundation of American global power for 50 years. It is why America can run enormous deficits without collapsing. It is why the Federal Reserve is effectively the world's central bank. It is why American sanctions work, because everyone needs access to the dollar system. The arrangement is cracking. China and Saudi Arabia have been conducting oil trades in Chinese yuan. Russia, cut off from the dollar system by Ukraine-related sanctions, has been trading in rubles, yuan, and direct barter. Iran has been trading in everything except dollars for years, having had no choice, and has developed expertise in dollar-free commerce that other sanctioned nations are now studying as a model.
The BRICS economic bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now including Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and others, has been actively discussing alternatives to dollar-denominated trade. A BRICS currency hasn't materialized, but the conversation itself is historically significant. 10 years ago, it was fringe. Today, it's a formal agenda item at international summits. Iran's inclusion in BRICS in 2023 was not coincidental. A sanctioned state officially welcomed into a bloc that is explicitly positioning itself as an alternative to the American-led economic order. The message was clear, even if nobody said it out loud. The petrodollar is not dead, but it has never been more questioned. And Iran, the country America tried hardest to exclude from the global economy, is sitting at the table where its replacement is being designed. For decades, the Middle East political map was relatively stable. American allies on one side, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Jordan, Israel, Iran and its network on the other. The Cold War logic had simply been re-skimmed with new actors. That map is now being redrawn in real time. The most shocking development, Saudi Arabia and Iran restored diplomatic relations in March 2023, a deal brokered not by America, not by the country that has been the region's self-appointed peacemaker for decades, but by China. Read that sentence again. China mediated a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran in a region that America considers its strategic backyard. The symbolism was devastating. America watched from the sidelines as its two most important regional partners decided to stop fighting each other with help from America's primary geopolitical rival. Saudi Arabia has been buying Chinese weapons, conducting joint military exercises with Russia, cutting oil production against American requests. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has reportedly made clear that Saudi strategic interests, not American preferences, will now drive Saudi foreign policy.
The UAE, home to the largest American military base in the Middle East, Al Dhafra Air Base, has been expanding economic ties with China, entertain Huawei technology, and declining to fully align with Western sanctions on Russia.
So, here we are. America, still powerful, still the world's largest military, still the issuer of the world's reserve currency, but visibly strained, visibly incoherent, visibly questioning whether the Middle East is worth the cost. Iran, still sanctioned, still internally repressive, still facing a restive population that in 2022 rose up across the country in the largest protests the Republic had ever seen, but strategically more influential than at any point since 1979. Its proxies have reshaped regional military realities. Its diplomacy has pulled China and Russia into the region as counterweights. Its nuclear program has become an unavoidable negotiating reality. Is this the end of American dominance? Not yet. Probably not entirely. American power doesn't disappear, it adjusts, repositions, finds new expressions. Is this Iran's peak moment? Possibly. The Islamic Republic faces genuine existential pressures. Its economy is struggling, its population is young, tech-savvy, and in significant numbers opposed to the regime. The system that 1979 built is aging. Revolutions, even successful ones, tend to calcify. But here is what is undeniably true. The order that America built after 1945, the bases, the petrodollar, the alliances, the unchallenged assumption of dominance, is being contested in ways it has never been contested before. And Iran, the country that Washington has tried to isolate and destroy for 45 years, is one of the primary forces doing the contesting. History doesn't always go to the strong. Sometimes it goes to the patient. And if there is one thing Iran has demonstrated across decades of sanctions, wars, assassinations, and sabotage, it is that they are extraordinarily, almost incomprehensibly patient. The era of American dominance in the Middle East is not over, but it is ending, slowly, then perhaps all at once. So, there you have it. 45 years of sanctions, assassinations, maximum pressure, and one very confused American president who apparently thought he had a future in Iranian politics, and the Islamic Republic is still standing. Make it make sense, Washington. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me who actually wins in this story: America, Iran, or China, who's been sitting quietly in the corner this whole time.